Oh dear, something very strange is going on in the garden of Heatherfield Farm. I wonder what it is. Let's go and see. Because this story is called Hills and Tunnels. It was early on a Saturday morning, and Leo was still tucked up in bed, sound asleep, when Tolstoy suddenly burst into Leo's bedroom, jumped on the bed, and started licking Leo's face. Leo was immediately awake, wondering what was happening. "Stop it, Tolstoy!" he shouted, trying to push Tolstoy away. But the excited dog simply thought this was a game and continued licking Leo even more. Tolstoy was normally locked in the utility room at night, but somebody had let him out. That somebody was Felicity, and she was now standing in the doorway of Leo's bedroom, laughing so much she was almost crying. "You're horrible!" Leo shouted at his sister. "If I'm awake before you tomorrow, I'm going to get Tolstoy to do the same to you." And with that, Leo struggled from under Tolstoy to roll out of bed and onto the floor. "Right, I'm going to get you," the still angry Leo threatened his sister as he scrambled to his feet, but he was too late, because Felicity had already run away and had now locked herself inside the bathroom. "You can't get me," she taunted and giggled, whilst Leo vainly banged on the bathroom door. Leo soon realized that once girls or ladies go into the bathroom, they never seem to come out. They always spend ages washing themselves, combing their hair, brushing their teeth, and doing all sorts of other things that men or boys would only take 30 seconds to do. Tolstoy was standing next to Leo, fiercely wagging his tail and scratching at the bathroom door. He still thought it was all some kind of game. "Come on, Tolstoy," Leo patted the dog on the head. "It's time for you to go outside, and then I can go back to bed." Tolstoy was a very intelligent dog, and seemed to know what Leo was saying, because he immediately turned and ran down the stairs, through the hallway and the kitchen to the utility room. Leo chased after him. When he got to the utility room, Tolstoy was leaping up against the garden door, trying to push it open, but he couldn't because it was locked. "Hold on a minute, Tolstoy," Leo ordered, trying to get past the boisterous dog. Leo turned the key, undid a bolt, and turned the handle. The garden door had only opened a fraction when Tolstoy pushed his nose against the edge of the door, squeezed through, and bounded into the garden with a joyful bark. Although he was still in his pyjamas and hadn't put his slippers on, Leo followed Tolstoy because it was always fun to see his dog running around like a crazy thing whenever he was let out. Tolstoy would run as fast as he could, stop suddenly, sniff at something, sometimes leap into the air, start running again, and then go off in a hurry to investigate everything in the garden. Leo laughed. It was always good to see a happy dog. Although it was going to be a nice, warm and sunny day, the early morning air had a chill in it, and Leo's bare feet were freezing on the paving stones outside the kitchen. Leo was about to rush back to the kitchen door when something out of the corner of his eye drew his attention. There was something on the lawn that hadn't been there before. Leo went to take a closer look. There was a damp, sparkling dew on the lawn, which made it even colder for Leo to walk on. Instead, he tiptoed. What he had seen was a soft mound of brown earth that looked as if it had been dropped into the centre of the lawn. Leo wondered what it was doing there, and then had a horrible thought. "Oh no!" Leo cried. "Tolstoy's been digging for one of his bones." Leo was about to go off and find Tolstoy to give him a scolding when he realized something. Whenever Tolstoy dug up a bone, or whatever else interested him, it was usually very messy, and he always left a hole. This mound was different. It wasn't messy, and it certainly didn't have a hole. As Leo was thinking about this, he looked up, and once again exclaimed, "Oh no!" He had seen another mound, and it was on the edge of the lawn next to the vegetable patch. I wonder what it is, he groaned. Jacob's going to be very upset when he sees this, Leo muttered. Indeed, Jacob the gardener would probably do quite a bit of grumbling. He was very proud of the lawn and spent a lot of time making it look perfect. He raked it, pricked it, fed it, cut it, put a heavy roller across it, and made sure it was always properly watered. You would never find moss or weeds in this lawn. It was always green and looked exactly like those that Leo had seen on a golf course. These mounds of brown earth would take a lot of mending, and it would be even worse if more of them appeared. There was nothing Leo could do, so he quickly retraced his steps across the lawn and went back into the house. There was wet grass on his feet, so he brushed both feet on the utility room mat, then looked for a kitchen towel to dry them. As he was doing this, his father, Steve, came into the kitchen. He was a bit bleary-eyed. Oh, hello, Leo. What are you doing down here this early? Is it that blooming dog again? He asked, while filling up the kettle to make a cup of tea. Dad, there are little brown hills on the lawn, and I don't know who's put them there, Leo blurted. Steve immediately put the kettle down and walked through to the utility room. Looking out of the window, he could see the mounds. Suddenly he grumbled, Drat! We've got a mole! Leo had heard about moles, but didn't know much about them. Does that mean we're going to have those little hills all over the garden? He asked, feeling very worried that it was going to make the garden look really awful. Jacob will know what to do, Steve assured his young son. He won't like what he sees, but I'm sure he'll solve it. I think I'd better phone him and ask him to come over today before that mole does any more damage. 2 hours later, the creaking sound of Jacob's bike could be heard in the lane outside Heatherfield farm. Ringing his bell to announce his arrival, Jacob leaned his old bike against the garage wall and then walked over to the house to knock on the utility room door. Tolstoy had heard Jacob and had raced across the garden to welcome him. Hello, my young friend, Jacob chuckled. What's all this about a mole I've just been told? The only answer Tolstoy was able to give was a woof woof, when suddenly the utility room door opened. It was Leo. Leo was very glad to see Jacob and immediately took him around to the garden to see the mounds. He was a bit worried that Jacob might be angry, but Jacob was never angry. He loved all the creatures that came into the garden because he believed they had as much right to be there as he had. However, he made an exception where some were concerned, especially if they were likely to damage things. Of course, it would never enter his mind to hurt them. He would simply encourage them to go to some other place where they would be just as happy. Well, Jacob decided, what I've got to do is to get some sound repellers and stick them in the ground. Leo didn't know what these were, so Jacob explained. Well, young Leo, these repellers make some sort of very high sound. It's so high that human beings like you and me, we can't hear it because our ears aren't good enough. But animals can hear it, and they don't like it. It makes them run away. So I think I'd better get some and put them in the garden pretty sharpish. I've got a pal who looks after lawns. I'll ask him if I can borrow his, because I don't want to have to spend money and buy them when I can get them for free. Then Jacob turned to go back to his bike. I'll be off now, Leo, and see if I can get my hands on those repellers. As soon as Jacob had left, Leo rushed back into the house and up to his bedroom. He had a small bookshelf with lots of very interesting things on it. Apart from a few toy cars and comics, it had all his favourite books. Some of them were storybooks, but the ones that really interested him were about dinosaurs, insects, birds, flowers, and trees. He had another book, which somebody hadn't wanted and had given him for a birthday present. It was all about mammals, and told you everything about foxes, rabbits, deer, mice, shrews, bears, otters, or any other warm-blooded mammal you could think of that lived in our country and in Europe. Leo immediately grabbed the book and started to thumb through its pages. He was looking for information about moles. It was very, very interesting. He found out that moles were very small creatures. They had very silky black fur, huge claws for digging, and stayed almost all the time living underground, looking for worms, grubs, and larvae to eat. Indeed, they were hungry little creatures because they ate almost their own weight in food each and every day. That is why moles were always making tunnels under the ground, and when they made their tunnels, it was obvious the earth they removed had to go somewhere. That is why moles left mounds of earth all over the place that we know as molehills. Now, as moles can dig well over 100 meters of tunneling a day, this was a very serious problem for gardeners. Apart from the mess, the tunnels could damage or destroy the roots of flowers and plants, killing them. Leo wasn't surprised that Jacob was eager to make the little mole go away. It was around midday when Jacob returned and once more placed his bike against the garage wall. Leo was soon out to greet him. "Have you got them?" he asked eagerly. "Aye, Leo, here they are." Jacob pulled out an old sack from the little trailer that was always attached to the back of his bike. He fished around inside the sack, and one by one he retrieved what looked like mushrooms on sticks. "These here are the repellents," Jacob explained as Leo picked one up to examine it. "They are solar powered. That means the sun helps to make the electricity that makes them work. That's what that mushroom bit at the top does. All I have to do is stick them in the ground and hope for the best." "I hope it works," Leo commented. He certainly didn't want to see any more horrible mounds on the lovely lawn. He then followed Jacob into the garden, where the old gardener began to insert the repellents at various points in the lawn. "I'll start near the house," he explained. "Then, after a bit, I'll yank them out and put them a bit further down the garden. That way we'll gradually get them all to move away from the lawn, the vegetable plot, the flower beds, and out of the garden. Well, at least that's the plan." "Are they working?" Leo asked, looking very doubtful. "Because I can't hear anything." "I'm sure they are," Jacob assured. "Don't forget, we can't hear them, but Mr. Mole can, and he won't like it." Next morning when Leo got up, he immediately looked out of his bedroom window to see if there were any more mounds, or molehills as Jacob called them. He was very relieved to find there were none. It looked like those mushroom repellents were working. After breakfast, Leo went into the garden to take a closer look. Naturally, Tolstoy followed him to see what was happening. There were no molehills on the lawn, and it looked as if the vegetable plot and flower beds were also free of them. But it was a different story further down the garden, when you went through the long grass towards the orchard. There Leo began to find new molehills. When Jacob arrived, Leo immediately took him to see them. Jacob was delighted. "Ah, that's just what we wanted to happen. That Mr. Mole doesn't like the nasty noise those mushroom repellents make, and he's run away from them. Now, all we need to do is to move our little mushrooms down to here and encourage him to move even further away." Jacob's very clever plan worked. Each day he was able to move his special mushroom repellents further down the garden until there were no more molehills in the main part of the garden or the orchard. Mr. Mole had been pushed into the forest. This may have been good news for Jacob and the Sutcliffe family, but it didn't make everyone happy. In particular, the Tiddlewits. One afternoon, Seraphine was outside the front door of her little house under the old oak tree, looking after baby Bluebell, when the ground in front of her seemed to move. Then a little piece of earth was thrown up, and then another, and another, until there was a whole mound of it. Seraphine ran indoors to tell her father. Mr. Tiddlewit came out just in time to see 2 claws and a little nose sticking out of the new molehill. "Oi, what are you doing digging up the front of my house?" Mr. Tiddlewit yelled, rather angrily at the strange creature. What? Who's that?" the little creature asked, looking round and blinking in the sunlight to see who was shouting at him. "It's me, and my name is Mr. Tiddlewit," Mr. Tiddlewit informed rather proudly. "Now, what are you doing making a mess of my front garden? I suppose you expect me to clear it all up." The mole could still not see Mr. Tiddlewit very well. Indeed, he could never see anything very well, because he always lived in total darkness underground. All that his eyes would let him do was to see light and dark, and to detect if anything was moving close to him. Otherwise he was almost blind. Could you come a bit closer, please?" the mole requested. Mr. Tiddlewit obliged and moved a few steps nearer. He didn't want to get too close to the mole in case he fell into the tunnel he had just been digging. "Thank you, sir," the mole acknowledged. "I do apologize for making everything untidy, but the problem is I'm never quite sure what's happening or where I am up top when I'm underground." "Well, I'm telling you right now where you are. You're slap bang in front of my house. Now, what are you doing in this part of the garden and the forest?" Mr. Tiddlewit inquired. The mole was only too happy to explain. He said how a terrible noise had suddenly vibrated all along his tunnels, and that he had had to dig new ones to get away from it. It seemed, he said, that even when he had done this, the noise always followed him, getting closer and closer. "I just can't sleep any more, and now I'm in the part where there are lots of tree roots, which makes it difficult for me to make my tunnels and to find the worms I need to eat." Mr. Tiddlewit began to feel rather sorry for the mole. He was also a bit worried that the noise the mole complained about might get closer to the Tiddlewits' house under the old oak tree, and keep them all awake at night. "My, oh my," Mr. Tiddlewit considered the problem. "What are we going to do about it?" "Well, really, I need to be in a place where there's plenty of grass or vegetables, somewhere nice where there's lots of worms and no trees or bushes." Mr. Tiddlewit considered a bit more, and suddenly thought he had a solution. He had once ventured beyond the stream at the end of the small forest. He had only done it once because he wasn't a good swimmer, and he was worried the stream might carry him away. Anyway, what he found on the other side of the stream was a huge pasture where enormous black and white creatures were eating the grass. Of course, you and I know them to be cows, but to Mr. Tiddlewit they were simply gigantic monsters, and very frightening for anyone who was no taller than a squirrel. "I think I can find you a new home," Mr. Tiddlewit suggested to the mole. "But you might get a bit wet in the process because you'll have to cross a stream." "Oh, I can do that," the mole replied, sounding a bit more cheerful at finding a better place to do his tunneling. I wonder, can you help me to find it, because my eyesight is not at all good up here?" "With pleasure," Mr. Tiddlewit agreed. "I'll take you along when it gets dark and show you the best place to cross the stream. Make sure you're here and I'll be waiting for you." Later that day, and after he had had his supper, Mr. Tiddlewit put on his jacket and clogs, ready to go out. Pickle and Pumpkin were desperate to go too, but Mrs. Tiddlewit said it was too late and they would soon have to go to bed. Opening his front door, Mr. Tiddlewit saw the light was already beginning to fade, and that the moon was already a quarter way into the sky. "Well, it's a fine night for a little walk," he declared, as he quietly closed his front door. The molehill was still there, although Mr. Tittlewit had already smoothed it out a bit. He had his strong walking stick with him, and now he used it to tap very hard on the ground. He hoped the mole would hear it. At first nothing happened, but Mr. Tittlewit was very patient, and he was soon rewarded with a scrabbling noise and more bits of earth shooting up out of the molehill.
"Sorry, I do hope I haven't kept you waiting. I was asleep, building up my strength in case we have a long way to go," the mole informed.
No worry," Mr. Tittlewit chortled. "It's not all that far, but I'm afraid you'll have to come out of that tunnel, because if I go down there, I'll never find our way to the stream." Easing himself out of the molehill, the mole stood on all four legs next to Mr. Tittlewit. "Goodness gracious," Mr. Tittlewit declared. "Those are mighty big claws you've got. No wonder you're so good at digging those tunnels of yours." The mole smiled.
"Yes, they do come in handy."
Then he said,
I do need to stay very close to you. It's my eyes, you know. Not very good. I often bump into things when I'm up here. I usually use my whiskers to feel where I'm going."
Mr. Tittlewit noticed the mole's long whiskers. "Don't you fret, my little friend, and I don't mind if you use those nice long whiskers to stay in contact with me." With that, Mr. Tittlewit and his new friend set off through the little forest towards the stream. It is true that the mole did bump into quite a few things, even into Mr. Tittlewit, almost tripping him up a few times. But nobody got hurt, and eventually they arrived at the stream. "Right," Mr. Tittlewit said. "Let's find the safest place to cross. There's a narrow bit further along that's probably best." Staying close to the edge of the stream and holding on to tussocks of grass so that he wouldn't fall in, Mr. Tittlewit led the mole downstream to the place he was looking for. "Good, here we are, my friend. Do you think you can manage it?"
I should think so," the mole replied. "I float like a cork, so don't worry. I would just like to thank you for being so kind to me."
Mr. Tittlewit tried to shake the mole's hand, but then realized it was a big claw and patted him on the shoulder instead. The mole slipped into the water and began to swim. It swam very well because, after all the digging it did, its front claws and front legs were very powerful. Soon, and despite the gloom, Mr. Tittlewit could see the mole climbing up out of the water onto the opposite bank of the stream. "Good luck, my little friend," he shouted. The mole replied with a little wave of his claw, and was soon gone, digging the first of his tunnels in his new home. Mr. Tittlewit didn't expect to see the mole again, but some weeks later, after it had been raining heavily, he went fishing. Sitting on the bank of the stream, he suddenly had a little surprise. Across the water he saw a black silky creature slip into the water, and soon after it surfaced next to him. It was the mole.
I couldn't see you, but I heard you," it cheerfully explained. "So I thought I'd come and tell you how I've been getting on."
Mr. Tittlewit was very pleased to see his little friend, and listened attentively.
"Well," the mole began, "the soil over there is an absolute dream. I've never come across so many worms and bugs. I think if I get any fatter, I'm going to have to dig bigger tunnels."
Mr. Tittlewit laughed and had to admit something. "Well, I'm very pleased for you, but I have to say I was a bit worried about those black and white monsters. I kept thinking they might tread on you one day, and then we'd have a squashed Mr. Mole." The mole laughed. Of course, Mr. Tittlewit was referring to the cows in Mr. Mole's field.
"Oh, no, no, no. Those monsters are very useful," the mole informed. The worms and bugs grow very fat on all the poos those monsters keep doing. I couldn't do without them."
Realizing how grateful he was to Mr. Tittlewit, Mr. Mole now suggested something.
"You know, Mr. Tittlewit, I'm considerably in your debt. I wonder if there's anything I could do to repay your kindness."
At first, Mr. Tittlewit said it wasn't at all necessary, but Mr. Mole insisted. Pausing to think, and then looking down at Mr. Mole's large claws, he changed his mind.
"I wonder if you wouldn't mind doing a bit of digging for me. It won't take long, and all the family would love to see you again."
"Lead on," said Mr. Mole, happy at last that he could do something to help the Tittlewits. At home, under the old oak tree, the Tittlewits were running out of space. The arrival of baby Bluebell really meant they needed another room, so that Bluebell, her cot, and all her baby things could be put in it. As Mr. Mole was so brilliant at tunnelling, Mr. Tittlewit thought he would be just the person to dig out the new room. When Mr. Mole learned of Mr. Tittlewit's plan, he was delighted. There was nothing more he liked doing in the world than having a good dig, so as soon as he arrived at the old oak tree, he got to work immediately. It was going to be very messy because Mr. Tittlewit had lots of excavated earth to remove, and that meant taking it through the house and kitchen in his wheelbarrow. "Oh, dearie me," Mrs. Tittlewit kept saying, as she followed Mr. Tittlewit all day with her brush and pan sweeping up after him. By mid-afternoon, Mr. Mole and Mr. Tittlewit had made the new room, and everything had started to get back to being clean and tidy again.
"I think I'll have a little nap,"
the very proud Mr. Mole informed, and promptly fell asleep in Mr. Tittlewit's rocking chair. He wasn't asleep for very long when there was a frantic knocking on the front door. Seraphine wondered what it was and went to open it. There she found Spud, breathless and beginning to cry. She had never seen Spud cry before, and realized something very serious must have happened. She soon discovered what.
"Mum and Dad are trapped, and so's the whole family,"
Spud blurted out.
"I tried to get to them, I really did, but it's no use. They're stuck in there, and soon they won't have any air to breathe."
Mr. Tittlewit realized something horrible had happened, but didn't quite understand what Spud meant by trapped.
"Now calm down there, young Spud, and tell me step by step what has happened,"
Mr. Tittlewit gently coaxed. It soon became clear what had happened. After all the heavy rain, the compost heap under which the Niffypongs lived had become totally saturated with water. Finally, the little tunnel that led into the Niffypong house collapsed, and now none of them could get out. A rescue was now very urgent. If it wasn't done quickly, there was no telling what would happen to the Niffypongs.
"Now don't worry, young Spud. We'll have your mum, dad, and brothers and sisters out of that hole in no time,"
Mr. Tittlewit assured. But then he wondered how he was going to do it. If it was just him digging with his spade, it would take him ages to get through to the Niffypongs, and time is something they didn't have. Besides, it could be dangerous work. What if he got halfway to them and then got trapped himself? Mr. Tittlewit began to worry. But then he heard a snore coming from the corner of the kitchen, and in particular from his rocking chair.
"That's it!"
he gleefully exclaimed.
"Mr. Mole can do it. He's exactly the one we need to do the rescue."
Mr. Tittlewit immediately went over to the rocking chair and gently shook Mr. Mole. Sleepily, Mr. Mole stirred.
"What's up? What's up?"
he burbled. "Come on, Mr. Mole. We've got another job to do, and we've got to do it quickly. I'll explain it to you on our way to the compost heaps," Mr. Tittlewit informed his friend, sounding very serious. Now, fully awake, Mr. Mole immediately got up out of the rocking chair and quickly shuffled out of the old oak tree, trying very hard to keep up with Mr. Tittlewit and Spud. When they got to the compost heaps, Spud didn't need to explain what had happened, because it was obvious the heavy rain had collapsed the compost where the Niffybongs lived. A sort of landslide completely blocked the entrance to the Niffybong home. Mr. Tittlewit looked at the problem and felt very glum. He wasn't sure if either he or Mr. Mole could do anything about it. But just as he was thinking these thoughts, Mr. Mole suddenly set to work, digging at a fantastic rate just where the Niffybong front door used to be. Old leaves, grass clippings, bits of rotting cabbage, carrot tops, and all sorts of other compost started flying about all over the place as Mr. Mole's powerful claws got to work. It wasn't long before Mr. Mole had totally disappeared inside the compost heap. Spud and Mr. Tittlewit waited very patiently, wondering what progress Mr. Mole was making. They waited and they waited, but nothing seemed to be happening. Spud put his ear next to the compost heap and thought he could hear something scrabbling about inside it. He even thought he could hear very faint shouting, but after that there was complete silence. By now Spud and Mr. Tittlewit had been joined by Seraphine, Pickle, and Pumpkin. Mrs. Tittlewit had wanted to come too, but she had to look after baby Bluebell. "It doesn't look good," Spud groaned. "What if Mr. Mole has got himself trapped as well?" Spud need not have worried, because suddenly he heard noises and cries from the hole Mr. Mole had made when he entered the compost heap. Then, one by one, the Niffypongs appeared. First there was Aspen, then Saffron, then Nestor and Mrs. Niffypong, and finally Mr. Niffypong carrying little Jojo. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. "Thank heavens you're safe," Seraphine exclaimed, whilst trying very hard to hold back her tears. "My, oh my, that was a close shave," Mr. Niffypong declared, blinking and shielding his eyes from the sudden light. "If it hadn't been for Mr. Mole, we'd all have been in deep and dire trouble." By now all the Tittlewits were hugging their Niffypong friends, so relieved they were that the brave Mole had rescued them. But where was Mr. Mole? He had not come out of the compost heap. 5 minutes passed, then 10, and then 15, and still there was no sign of him. "Oh, dearie, dearie me," Mrs. Niffypong wailed. "That fearless Mr. Mole has got himself trapped. What can we do?" Whilst they were urgently discussing what they might do to help, Nestor thought she heard something coming from the back of their compost heap. It was singing. Somebody was singing a little song. Suddenly everyone rushed to the back of the compost, and there they saw Mr. Mole lying on his back and rubbing his tummy. He had a very satisfied look on his face. "Well, well, well," he said, and then gave a little burp. I've never come across so many worms in all my life." Laughing heartily, Mr. Tittlewit was the first to speak. "You silly mole, you really had us worried, but all the time you were just feeding yourself on lots and lots of worms." With that, everyone cheered their hero, patting him on the back, kissing him and stroking his black velvet fur. Mr. Mole was rather embarrassed, but loved every minute of it. After their big fright, the Niffypongs were all invited back to the old oak tree to have a cup of tea and cakes to celebrate Mr. Mole. It was a little party where everybody was very merry, singing songs and doing jolly dances. But Mr. Mole didn't see it all, because he was soon asleep again in Mr. Tittlewit's rocking chair. Later that day, when Mr. Mole had had his nap, he asked Mr. Tittlewit if he would guide him back to the stream. After all the excitement, he rather wanted to go home. So, just before the sun went down, all the Tittlewits and Niffypongs accompanied Mr. Mole to the stream at the end of the forest. After more hugs and cheers, he left them, slipping into the water and swimming to the other bank of the stream. With a last wave of his big claws, Mr. Mole suddenly disappeared into one of his dark tunnels. Everyone was sad to see him go. Over the next few days, the Niffypongs had to stay with the Tittlewits, as Mr. Niffypong went to work making their home under the compost heap safe to live in. Of course, it was all a bit of a squeeze under the old oak tree, but much better than expected, because Mr. Mole had given the Tittlewits that large new room. It wasn't too smelly either, much to the relief of Mrs. Tittlewit, because Mrs. Niffypong ordered all her family to have a good wash and to use the sweet-smelling lavender water that Seraphine kindly gave to them.